Go ahead and get started with the meeting. To approve the minutes of the prior meeting.
Motion to approve.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Discussion of the potential amendments to the downtown St. Genevieve redevelopment plan and redevelopment area boundaries. You all, Martin.
Since our last meeting, we've received a number of requests for property owners to be sequestered. They're set up as their individual redevelopment project areas. And that list is made available to you by Pam at your table. There are two parts to this. One is to remove the properties that are in the first grouping, which are owned by not-for-profit organizations that were not, that were part of the redevelopment area overall, and later were acquired, and that list hasn't changed since we last met. Then you have the list of properties that we knew about when this letter went out that wanted to be sequestered. Then you have a list of properties that requested it after the letter went out. And Pam has made this neat little map here.
Actually, Dave did it.
Dave has made this neat little map here, color-coded, which shows in yellow the properties that are owned by not-for-profit and would be eliminated from the district, and in green the properties that have that requested that they be sequestered. Tonight, the decision is to decide what map to send forward to the public hearing. So we will provide the information at the public hearing on what's being taken out, what's being sequestered, based on the decision tonight. After the public hearing, the TIF Commission then will be asked to make a final recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. I think we can hold the vote on the final recommendation the same night we have the public hearing.
Yes.
So we don't have to have a special meeting. The other item, other than general discussion, is that Bob Miller, who is here tonight, has sent a letter that we didn't have everybody's email address, so we couldn't send it on electronically, so we distributed it tonight. I thought we would give Bob an opportunity to come forward and describe for you what it is he's talking about here and get your reaction and the attorney's reaction. Mark has had a chance to review this ahead of time, so it's not being sprung on him at the meeting. So Bob, you want to come up and be heard?
Before Bob starts, Bob has been, I think, staying up at night trying to figure out a way to make this as simple as possible, and over the last months come up with several suggestions of other ways that hopefully we were able to do this, and this is, and he's certainly put an awful lot of thought into this thing about how to do it, and so far I think Mark's, well, we've got some opinions on a few of them, but anyway, Bob, thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me talk. I hope I don't talk too long. I've been a part of this TIF project since 2013, as when I was a part of the lead project at the hotel building. I'm no longer a part of that. I'm a private property owner within the TIF district. And unfortunately, the downtown TIF has never worked the way it was supposed to, I think because of several reasons. One, the way it was written. Two, because of we really haven't sold it as a way to rehabilitate the downtown area. And really, the plan was to do two things: rehabilitate buildings, put them into hopefully sales tax producing ventures, but also to give the city some monies to do the projects that they outlined in the original TIF plan. So I kind of applauded your efforts to try to fix the pilots part of this thing with the taking out the not-for-profits. And then the sequestering kind of came in, and unfortunately you didn't send that notice of that meeting to all the people that were in the downtown TIF. Several of us have owned properties that used to be businesses, now private homes, and they could go back to being businesses. I'd love to have been a part of that discussion. So that's started looking at it. I think when I looked at this whole thing, I want things to be fair and consistent across the downtown TIF. And I don't think that with sequestration, that's allowing it to be fair and consistent. And you have some language in the original, excuse me, the original TIF plan, and I've probably read that plan more than anybody in the public has over the last 5 years. And it says that it was the expressed intent of that plan that all the above redevelopment project costs shall be eligible for reimbursement from available funds in the special allocation fund. And now with sequestration, as it was explained to me, took 3 meetings and 1 email. We now set up some little special rules for people that are sequestered. By the way, I requested to be sequestered. I don't know why anyone in the district wouldn't have requested that. So I tried to find a way where you could do what you wanted to do. Everybody's tried to be treated fairly and consistently. And that was to eliminate that paragraph. I think you're going to have to do that anyway to do sequestration, but put in some rules that if you have a redevelopment project that you're paying 100% for, you set it up like a sequestered project in there. The rest of it, goes into the special allocation fund and can do those projects that the city wants to do. I think you have some issues that you're going to have, if you do sequestration, how you're going to resolve monies that are coming in sequestered properties that are favorable to 2012, either before they have the project or after they've paid off their TIF note. So that's really what I was all about, is let's try to make it fair and consistent, everybody treated the same way, and let's make this downtown TIF work for the community. We've lost 5 years, 2 projects in 5 years. That's not a good record for a TIF. So I'd encourage you to take a look at this and see if you can do something with it. Thank you. Any questions? I'd be glad to answer them.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Which you, both of you, we had the discussion before, and this one, they certainly seem to make a lot of common sense, but I don't know what legal, yeah, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, and I applaud anyone who takes the time to read through everything, and I'm by no means the single source of good ideas. I have plenty of bad ideas along the way. Unfortunately, we are hamstrung by what's in the TIF Act, and the TIF Act says that when we look at how TIF revenues are generated, both the property taxes called pilots and the sales taxes called EATs, we have to measure them on all the property within an area selected for a redevelopment project. So the way the plan exists today, the area selected for the redevelopment project is all 300 parcels. Our only ability to carve that up is to go through the process we're going through right now and sequestering properties into their own redevelopment project area and letting those properties have their own redevelopment project. That project will be the same activities that are elsewhere in the area. I mean, you rehab your home, you contribute monies to, or TIF revenues generated from those properties could be contributed to activities that benefit the entire larger area, infrastructure, the RV park, things like that that were contemplated in the original plan. In theory, we could create 300 separate RPAs, one redevelopment project area for each parcel. It's an administrative nightmare. So the hope here was that for the people who wanted to have their property treated separately, that we would go through the process, we would take on the administrative work of doing that for them. But the thought of doing it for everyone under the mechanics of the TIF Act is just a very large undertaking, which in the end may not have that much of a benefit, because by taking the 5 or 6 properties that are causing the pilots deficit out of the area altogether, we should be generating pilots immediately, and every property should be able to start benefiting from that.
And I think that's a good point, but also need to remind you that there were a couple of years, 3 years since we started it, where the eats weren't met overall. So there's no guarantee, just
Right.
because we're taking out the pilots, that will meet the other base overall.
But you are guaranteed that a sequestered project will get guaranteed payments.
Only to the extent they perform above
And
the
that's the
2012.
only thing anybody ever gets, only to the extent that they perform.
So these sequestered properties, they would have to meet their bases, and those bases are still going to be the amounts generated in 2012 for that specific property. And they would still have to have a project that's approved by the city for TIF assistance.
Well, you could sequester all 300 projects or properties, but don't set up the special accounting unless you do.
By sequestering, we have to set up a separate special allocation of fund with a pilot's account and a needs account for each sequestered property. And it has to be tracked individually,
Whether there's a project.
whether there's a project or not. That's the sort of administrative hurdle we're facing. And a lot of that, the city would have to track it, the county as well. They would have to, identify, when they send pilots over to the city, identify which RPA it's for each time.
But unless a property owner of one of those 300 parcel gets Board of Alderman approval for a project,
Right, enters into a redevelopment agreement.
the fact
with
that
the
property
city.
taxes might go up naturally, creating an increment over 2012 would be irrelevant.
Right.
When you
So
say
what-
the TIF Act is the state law, not...
Right.
Okay.
We could write something different in the redevelopment plan, but it wouldn't, if it doesn't comply with the TIF Act, it doesn't work.
We could choose not to include any of these, just take out the yellow ones and just, the TIF would be fine, it'd start working again.
Well, again, while it would immediately work for the pilots,
Right.
currently the sales tax is above the 2012 base. I don't have any reason to believe that it won't be in the future, but it has been insufficient in the past.
You could be above the base, but not, you could be above the base, but not if, say, one of the people participating, you're above the base, but not enough above the base to get back what you individually had put into it. Say you'd put in $500 or due back $500, but the base was only over by $100, you're not going to get your $500 back, you're only going to get the $100 back. That's what we've faced
Right.
that a few
Unless
times.
you were sequestered.
Unless you're sequestered, right.
Yep.
Any other comments? Bob?
Just I hope you do something that's
They
fair
own some of
and
them on
consistent.
Just Bob says, residential to
The state law is also about, I don't know how you can set up, we have a special allocation fund, but then you're setting up special allocation funds. Doesn't make sense. Really doesn't.
The existing special allocation fund would stay the fund for the areas that have not been sequestered into separate RPAs. And then new special allocation funds would be created for each sequestered property.
So how do you deal with the statement in the approved plan that says this is the redevelopment area, which was all 300 properties, and it is the express intent that all the redevelopment costs be paid out of the special allocation fund that was defined in the document, which was approved and recommended by the original TIF Commission and approved by ordinance 3855.
Well, as you point out in your letter, that section would have to be amended. And
So
it will be.
You can amend that, you can amend other parts of it too.
It will be amended to say that there will be separate special allocation funds for each redevelopment project area. And monies in those special allocation funds can be used for the redevelopment projects that benefit those redevelopment project areas.
I think you just said something different than projects that are sequestered projects.
So let me be clear about this. There's the redevelopment area, the whole 300 parcels. Projects that occur anywhere in that area can still benefit properties that have been sequestered into separate redevelopment project areas. And because there is that benefit, TIF revenues generated from those redevelopment project areas legally, not they will, but legally could, if the city so desired, be used to pay for those project activities. For instance, just a street improvement down the middle of the area that's going to benefit everyone. TIF revenues from all the properties in the redevelopment area could benefit or could pay for that improvement. The sort of rebate for the improvement of a specific property, you did something, you redeveloped the structure that's on there now so that it generates more tax revenues. That would either be done using the city's existing program applicable to the whole area, or that existing program applicable to just a sequestered separate redevelopment project area.
My last comment. What you're doing is you're guaranteeing somebody that if they exceed their 2012 base, they are going to get paid if they are sequestered. What you're saying to the rest of the people in the district is you'll only get paid if the base or the rest of the allocation district is positive in pilots or needs. And even as someone said, they can be positive but not enough to return. And I think that's been the example of what has actually happened over the last 5 years. Even when there was positive eats, there wasn't sufficient money to pay the two projects.
I think, first of all,
So the options to address that are have all 300 set up as individual project areas or not sequester anyone.
I said it was the last, but I think if you don't figure out how to make this a positive thing, this downtown TIF is not going to do its intended purpose of rehabilitating and redeveloping the downtown.
Okay, it's your turn.
Mark, if the city decides to do a redevelopment project, anybody that has a project, whether they're sequestered or not, gets paid before, if they have a note, they get paid before the city could do that, before the city could be reimbursed for their project or whatever, right?
I think that's how we've set up.
If we have to satisfy the obligation of the notes, and only if there is revenue available after that is done would money be used.
Right.
And frankly, the projects that need to be done require larger amounts of money, so it's unlikely, at least in the immediate future, that any of that surplus will be used for a project, and as it would have to accumulate over some period of time before there'd be enough to do anything meaningful.
Right. The only way you get a note on your property is to apply to the city, get approved for a redevelopment agreement, and to actually construct the project that generates incremental taxes.
And if everybody was sequestered, and say everybody was sequestered and nobody applied for a note, that would still fall, the monies would still go back to the city, any increment.
Right, until there's a redevelopment agreement providing otherwise.
Yeah, okay. Questions?
Motions?
So is the basic question we're looking at right now, number one question, are we going to provide or allow for sequestration of any properties in the district? Is that the basic question, number one?
Yeah, Mark and I had I'm sorry.
No, that's right. And if that is the question number one, then question number two presumably is, are we going to limit how many properties can be sequestered? Or are we going to go the maniacal route and let everybody on paper be sequestered? And Sue will come after all of us with a big butcher knife.
Well, the only ones who can be sequestered are currently the ones that are before you. We did address the possibility that somebody would want it later, but it would have to be a project of sufficient size that they would be willing to pay the cost of reconvening the commission, the legal fees, the mailing fees, and whatever, just for the purpose of getting sequestered. What was the first part of your statement?
Whether to sequester at all?
Yes, or whether to do less than all of those who have requested it. Was that your question?
Yeah,
And
is that the
I would
first thing we have
contend
to
that you'd
decide?
first have to establish some objective standard for making that determination. Otherwise, how do you decide?
So my next question will be to our attorney. Are there other jurisdictions who have wrestled this to the ground, and have they sequestered every parcel in a TIF area, no parcels in a TIF area, some? What's the standard?
There are a couple. First of all, large TIFs like this are not common. Often, most of the TIFs in the state are, one or two parcels. They're done for a specific development. These large-scale neighborhood ones, there's a few in St. Louis, a few in Kansas City. Downtown Cape has one. Downtown Cape is divided into 5 RPAs, kind of block by block by block. So it kind of reduces some of the risk there. They've only activated 2 or 3 of the redevelopment project areas right now, so they're waiting on some of those other ones until development's a little bit more imminent. And that's one way they're sort of tackling the risk of properties dragging down the whole area. That one also is a few years younger than this one altogether, and they may run into the same problem. I am not aware of any TIF that's gone through the process of creating 300 RPAs or for that matter 25 RPAs. Usually we see them block by block.
Thank you.
Just a
Sure.
quick question.
Sure.
Doesn't the approval of a redevelopment project require the TIF commission to review that and make a recommendation to the city board of aldermen?
No.
Well,
Read your,
when we say redevelopment project, what the project the TIF commission recommends is the very broad project that was presented in the original TIF plan, which included the renovation program, other city infrastructure activities, potentially an RV park, a very broad scope. If you're talking about a specific, I'm going to fix up this building for this purpose type project, that is a city, not a TIF commission purview. That's a redevelopment agreement issue. The redevelopment plan and the TIF commission's overview is sort of at the 20,000 foot level with the details at the city board of aldermen level.
I think he's looking. Any other comments, questions? Okay, so I guess that's kind of what's before us. Do you want to consider all, or these, or nothing?
Are we waiting until next meeting then? Are we do that tonight?
Tonight,
Tonight, you're making a recommendation on what to present at the public hearing. Your final decision will come after the public hearing.
Right, I need to prepare an amendment to the plan, and so I need to know whether that amendment will say, you know, we've divided it into 25, 30 RPAs, we've divided it into 10, we've just removed certain properties. I mean, if you want to take an easy first step, someone could make the motion to remove the properties that I think everybody agrees need to be removed.
you
I'll
can do
make
that?
that motion. I'll second.
Okay.
For just the removal
Yeah.
of the
Removal of the non-taxpaying properties.
Yeah.
Not for profit.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a motion to remove the 2, 4, 6, 7 properties. All right, that's all that's on there. Motion and a second. We have this motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. And then, so we got the next motion then. I mean, you do have, this is recommending of what to put before the public hearing. It's not a final decision. If you want to recommend here what's on paper, see how the public hearing goes, and make the decision after that.
So Mark, if let's say we recommend all 25, and somebody shows up and convinces them that one, or all 25, or 37, or however many there are,
Yeah.
should not be included, they aren't obligated by tonight's decision to decide
Yeah.
anything until the public hearing is over.
Right, we just,
But how different can it be? I mean, could they say, we want to sequester, and then at the public hearing decide we're not going to sequester any property?
I think you could, and admittedly, this is a little bit of a gray area. The statute isn't exactly clear, and we can talk about that a little bit maybe offline, but choosing not to sequester a property that's been noticed, I think, is a better fact situation than adding additional properties later on.
Okay?
I think if you're adding new properties to the
So
sequestration.
if they decided not to go forward with sequestration, that's fine.
Right.
If they decide to go forward with sequestration and we enumerate the properties that are under consideration, that's fine.
Yep.
if we say we're going to go forward with sequestration and we're only going to approve 10 of those that requested it, but then later want to add some of those we decided not to put forward tonight, that would be problematic.
That would, yeah, that would, I think, we'd want to keep our public hearing open until such time as we knew exactly which properties are happening.
And the reason we're doing this, we set the dates was because the Board of Aldermen has one meeting in December, and we were trying to make it possible for the board to make a decision at their December meeting.
Yeah. Ideally, we would hold the public hearing next Monday. If it closes, the TIF Act, the state law says we can't introduce an ordinance approving the amendment until 14 days after that public hearing closes. So if we have to extend that public hearing to another date, we're gonna, the board wouldn't be able to meet until 14 days after that date, and then we will have missed presumably the December.
But we could, second week in January.
Yeah.
What would be the bad side of that it rolls longer into the future?
Only that there may be a property owner anxious to get started.
At some point, you'll have to draw the line too.
Sure.
I mean, would one extension mess things up completely? Probably not. But then you wouldn't, you have the risk of somebody showing up at that, extended public hearing and they want in, and then you have to extend the public hearing again, and then another person shows up.
But at this point, we've only heard from those few additional property owners, correct?
No, we talked to twice that number.
Okay.
And we explained the process to them, and they said, well, it really doesn't benefit me, and so
Right.
I'm not going to bother to request it.
And all property owners got a letter that said, let us know by, was it
Right.
yesterday?
Yeah.
Was the deadline?
And it generated a lot of interest and a lot of phone calls. And Dick asked me, you ought to put something in the paper trying to explain this, which I did, and I don't think it helped, but that's another story. That's my verbosity getting in my way.
I kind of think, this is just my opinion I'm expressing, that maybe we should make this decision after the public hearing. I don't want to...
Well, but we have to know what it is we're proposing at the public hearing. You will make the decision after the public hearing.
Based on the public input. Right now, we're just talking to ourselves.
So I can prepare an amendment that shows all properties as potential separate RPAs. We can send a notice to the taxing districts that says all of these properties are under consideration. And then after the public hearing, they can make a recommendation, either accepting all of them or crossing certain ones out.
Okay, but if we're going to anticipate the possibility of culling the list, then I think we can't leave here without having decided on what basis you're going to do
Right.
that.
What does anybody else think?
My personal opinion is kind of what you stated before, which I don't really know the overall benefit of how that benefits the TIF much, but to not sequester any.
And I think that's a legitimate response. The statement that was made, and with the uncertainty is an impediment to a property owner deciding to use the TIF as an incentive to invest in rehabbing their property. I mean, I'm confident that what I'm doing is going to work, but I don't know what's going to happen in the rest of the world. That's the downside. Absent that, to me, there's neither benefit nor detriment to sequestering properties. If it works, if taking out the tax-exempt properties does what we think it's going to do, it should work. But
Right.
it
That's
hasn't. We
what-
thought that when we set it up. And we're sitting here today. So.
Well, but we know the reason why it's not properly functioning heavily relies on really one property. Heavily. That's not the total issue. So I don't see a problem with just removing those parcels and then hoping it works after that. I mean, that seems to be the most fairest and consistent way
Well,
to me.
Right now, the property you're referring to is in the
This is right.
sequestered. You're
Right.
saying we'll
I
just...
see. You're
We
right.
have to remove it altogether.
You're right. I forgot about that. That's right. So the Lucent building is being sequestered. That's right. I forgot about that.
And that could be another option if you want, right?
Right, I mean, that's a pretty unique category of,
But we were recommended not to do that per the bank, right? You're talking about removal?
The bank asked that they not be
Yeah,
removed
be removed,
because
yeah.
they thought it might help market the property.
That's right.
And then the owner of the building at, which one, 350 Market, suggested the sequestering.
So why, we can't wait till the next meeting to make a motion, whether or not we want to
Well,
sequester?
yeah, I mean, I think that's,
Oh, okay.
Mark's saying, I can send out a notice that's saying this is under consideration.
Yeah.
I'm saying if you're thinking about doing something other than all of them, you should establish tonight or prior to your decision what criteria you're going to use to do one and not another.
Just these specific properties, right?
Pardon me?
It would just be these properties, like we wouldn't add from this date forward, right?
I'm not hearing what you're saying.
I think
It'd
he's
just be-
saying that they would not want to entertain anyone who comes in with a late request.
No, I think we set a deadline for that. Now, it's just among these, you want to only do commercial properties. You know,
Right.
It's going to be,
Bob says, well, it may not be commercial today, but it could be tomorrow, and so is that fair?
one hard part we face then is how do you come up with the standards of why would you do this one and not be able to take care of that one? It's got to, yeah, it would have to almost be all or none.
Except for probably the Lucent building, which is kind of a class of its own.
It's the only manufacturing structure that's
Yeah.
zoned for manufacturing.
So are you saying if they decided to just basically sequester one building because of what it's doing to the overall base, they could sequester one building and eliminate the rest of them for that particular, really for that particular reason? It would still be sequestered, but
Right, I mean, you could have two RPAs, one RPA being the Lucent building and the other being everything else.
follow that?
I'd probably consider that sort of the default and then add on any other RPAs.
Well, and I think that's easily defendable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Everything else kind of gets
Yeah, fuzzy,
arbitrary.
right.
yeah.
yeah.
So, go ahead and, somebody want to make a motion to go ahead and prepare it the way it sits today with
I'll make that
making the final decision after the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion and a second to present the plan the way it is for the public hearing. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. Anything else? Anything else?
So, in order to inform your decision at the next meeting after the public hearing, is there any information that we can develop that would assist you? I don't know.
Can you,
You don't know what you don't know.
when taking out those properties that aren't generating tax, can you run some future numbers of the whole TIF of like what it would do without it sequestering?
Yes,
That'd be-
any. I'd do it any and with one and
Yeah.
with all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll give you those
Yeah.
numbers.
I I think I would like to see the removal of the not-for-profits, and then also see the removal, sequestering of the Lucent building, too. So
Yes, that's,
several different
I mean,
places.
three options. One is no sequestering, just taking out the not-for-profits. It won't meet the pilots, I can tell you that.
Right.
Right.
Two is just taking out the industrial building. Three is removing all that had requested being sequestered. And you're not removing them, I mean, they're still part of,
You're just going to sequester it.
Right.
yeah.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
That'd be
It would be helpful.
We will build those scenarios by Monday. Is it Monday?
Next month, following Monday.
The 26th.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Do you get everybody's to email?
Yes, not, there's a few that don't have emails.
Okay, well, maybe we can get them
but-
to them before the 26th,
Okay.
if we can.
Sure. We'll send emails to everybody we have an email, and we will personally deliver to those that don't.
Okay.
snail mail.
Yeah, I know I did look at earlier this week, just the properties to be taken out, the not-for-profit, they represented about 2.5% of the initial assessed value back in 2012 of the whole area. So not a whole lot of an impact by taking them out.
Yeah, taking them out
Right.
doesn't get you there.
It's,
It's that one.
That's it.
yep.
I think we have a better plan now.
Okay,
Okay, thanks.
motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
I oppose.